want to make sure your Joy-Cons click onto your switch okay. Just like that. Then you'll want to go to System Settings. Then go down to Controllers and Sensors. Then use your right analog stick to go down to Collaborate Control Sticks. Then you go in here to where it says Calibrate, and you see how there is a plus sign there. And you see how when I let go of the analog stick, it goes back to plus. That is a good sign, because if your analog sticks are not going back to that plus, that means it's still reading a sign that it's not centered. Now, you may want to try that in the first place before you change out your analog sticks, which I already did do that, and I definitely needed to replace the analog sticks. But whenever you first reinstall them into your system, you'll want to collaborate. And by doing that, you push X, and then you go into collaborate, and it'll tell you which way to move the analog stick. To the right, release, down, release, left, release, up, release, and then do a 360 turn. Collaboration complete. And like I said, you want to try those steps before you replace your analog sticks. And then if that doesn't work, you replace them like I did in this video. Okay, we are going to start with the left Joy-Con. This is if you're having drift issues with your analog stick. So the first thing we need to do is to make sure that we have a tri-wing screwdriver. And you're going to take off these 4 screws. There's one here, 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 and here. As these come off, I have an optional. I have a magnetic screw mat. You might not have that, but that's what I'm using. And then the 4th one is going to be up here. You want to take it off. Now here, what you want to do, I usually start right about here, and I'm going to use this plastic piece that is known as a spudger. On the opposite side of where these buttons are, you take a pick, you take a plastic pick, and then you put the lip under here and you pop this up. Now, when this comes up, you're just gonna open it like a book to the left. Be very careful when you do this, and you let it set right here. Now, you don't want to unhook these. The reason why you want to open this easily is because there are 2 ribbon cables, this one and this one, and you do not want those to break. Now, as you can see under here, here is the battery. And here is where a lot of people mess up. So you might want to pay attention to this part. It is optional. And if you are pretty good at taking tech apart, you can unplug this battery. But if you are a beginner, do-it-yourselfer, I suggest that you do not unplug this battery. A lot of people have been breaking the connector of the battery to the logic board of the Joycon. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this spudger and lift up on the battery. There may be a slight adhesive holding it, so you can expect that, and we're going to lay it up out of the way. So this is kind of how it's going to look, okay? Now the next thing we're going to do, a lot of people have a different name for the battery holder. I'm just going to call it the battery holder because that's where the battery rests inside of the Joycon. Okay, so you should only have to take 2 of these screws out that's holding the battery holder in. That is the bottom right one that comes right out, and then the top left one. Now those should be fairly similar, but they are a little different. So notice each of those screws where they come out. After you get those 2 screws out, there will be a third one, which is down here. If you can see it, it's this little tab. It goes down and it's right there. Then you will lift this up with the button. You will see that this button is lifting up with it, and you want to be careful. You lift it over easily because it's still attached to this ribbon cable, which connects to the button. Since we're playing it safe and we did not remove the battery, what we're going to do, we're going to have to remove. This has a safety lock, and what you want to do is gently pry underneath of it and push upward with the spudger tool. We want to use as many plastic tools as possible because we did leave the battery hooked up after all. We don't want to arc on this logic board anywhere. However, I am going to use a little tiny pair of tweezers with a plastic coating and pull that out of the way. As you can see now, we can get to this screw after we removed this ribbon cable. This screw and this screw is what holds the analog stick in. Now, before we remove the analog stick, we're going to have to remove this ribbon cable here, because this ribbon cable that is connected here is connected to the analog joystick. So we have one of those safety locks that you pry up again, and you do it very easily. And I wanted to show you up close what it looks like. Just do it gently, pry up, and that releases the ribbon cable to the analog stick. And I'm just going to give it a pull, a little tiny pull, and it pulls up out of there. You're now free to take out these 2 size 0 Phillips screws. And then you can hold the this little cable in the back, which I'm going to address this issue. Also, more than likely when you're doing this repair, the back button is going to come off and there is a spring attached, and I'm going to show you how to reattach that. So you might want to go ahead and just remove this back button, but when you do, just pull it up, and you may want to go ahead and remove the L shoulder button with this spring, because it's more than likely going to come off during this repair, and I'll show you how to put it back on. And while you're in here, you can clean this with, like, you get 98% isopropyl alcohol, and you can clean this if it's a little bit dirty. So I'm going to hold this. I'm going to hold the cable back right here with my tweezers, and I'm going to take off that second screw. I'm going to take it out, and I'm going to take out that analog stick. And when you're taking it out, there is you have to be careful, because there is a little tiny gasket right here, and you don't want it to come up. See this little tiny gasket right here? That little tiny gasket, you don't want it to come up out of there. If it does, you can put it back down there. You can put it back in place and it will be fine. There's a piece of plastic over there that holds it in place where I'm pointing to. But anyways, so that's how it comes out, and this is your old analog stick. So next, I am going to put the replacement ones in. You can see the replacement one is going to be a red one, because you can now order these in different colors. And I just wanted to switch up the colors a little bit. I'm going to hold up slightly the body of the Joycon, and I'm going to tighten down the first screw. And then I'm going to push, I'm going to hold that, then I'm going to hold that ribbon cable out of the way that tries to get in the way of the screw in the back. And I'm going to go ahead and tighten it down. Now, the reason why you have to hold the controller up just a little bit, I'd say by about 1 centimeter, is so it clears the analog stick that's under it, because it's going to be laying flat on the table. Now, we're going to need to do 2 things from here. Now I'm going to go ahead and clean. I'm going to go ahead and clean this right here without isopropyl alcohol, 98%. And then I'm going to show you how to reattach that the trigger button in the back. Okay, so I have some isopropyl alcohol. I'm going to clean the surface right here. And when I get done cleaning it, it should just evaporate. Clean that up. I'm also going to clean up the shoulder button here, and I'm going to take, you'll see that there's a kind of like a dip or a clip in the back, and it goes in first, and then you'll want to put the spring in this area right here. That's where the spring goes down into, and then it just sets in there. If you gently push down, you'll feel it click. You hear that clicking? That's how you know if it's in place. Now, it's going to fit down in the socket. However you're comfortable. I'm going to be using tweezers here. And I'm going to grab this here, and I'm going to line this up. See, I lined it up with the tweezers, and I made sure that the ribbon cable is where it's supposed to be. And now I'm gonna just close the plastic back down, and this is gonna lock it into place. Watch. You do this gently. And that means that that ribbon cable is locked back into place. If you're not careful with these connectors, you will break them, and that will be really bad. This is the analog ribbon cable that's going to be needed to be hooked back up into right here. Once it's in there, you can kind of push it down with your finger a little bit. Push it in, and you'll know when it goes in. It goes in about 1/100 of a centimeter. And then you'll want to close this plastic safety clip down just like that. And that means that's going to close the connections down and put pressure on the ribbon cable, and it'll be connected to the logic board. We're going to put the shoulder button back on, remember? Yeah. So the shoulder button, this little guy, came off. So I've already cleaned underneath here with isopro alcohol, and you're going to want to put this side over here. It goes down, the plastic piece goes down. You want to put that underneath the case, and as you can see right in here, that's where this little spring, and you do not want to lose this spring. It's going to set right in here, and this is going to go underneath the controller too. So you push it in there, and then you let it slide underneath the controller. And once you get it in there, you can actually push gently on the controller to see if it's seated right. And you should be able to hear it click. Listen. Okay. Now, what's going to hold that in place is when we put the battery holder back into place. When you go to put the battery compartment back on, you want to be careful because it's still connected to a ribbon cable that's connected to this button. So you're going to put it back gently to where it was and make sure it clears this little ribbon cable back here, because that goes to the other shoulder button. And then you'll just gently push down and get the battery compartment into place. And then I'm going to put the screws to the battery compartment back into place. It's going to go here in the upper left hand corner. The other yellow one is going to go near the bottom, near this little tab right here. And again, while you're doing this, you don't want to over tighten these, just make them snug. And then the last one, the little silver one, and it's going to go in here, the bottom right. It's slightly smaller than the others. It goes right in there. We're going to take the battery. We're going to be really careful with it. And we're going to turn it over to the way it came out. And it should clear. You can see there's a loop here, and it should clear on the tray, this little hole in the tray. And we're going to insert it back in there and gently kind of tap it around like this so that the adhesive can get onto it. And then we're going to take this outer shell here and close it just like a bookcase. As you're putting it back on, you want to see that the metal is going to clear this case here. And make sure it's snapped in. You should hear a little tiny snap. And then you're ready to put the screws back in. Okay, and we got top in, that one, and there's going to be 4. What you want to do at the very end is tighten down the 4 screws, the tri-wing screws, with your tri-wing screwdriver. Make sure they're in there good. And then here's your finished product, all repaired. One last tip, once you hook this to your Nintendo Switch, a good idea is to go into your system settings and to calibrate your Joy-Con since your since your analog stick has been replaced. And then you should be good to go. After the left Joy-Con, we are going to be replacing the analog stick in the right Joy-Con, which is similar but yet different. So we're going to take the tri-wing screwdriver and we're going to remove the 4 screws. There's one here, one here, one here, and one here. There's 4 total. Oops. So I'm going to put it on a magnetic pad. You don't have to have one of those. They do come in handy though. There's 3. Okay, now here comes the 4th one. The 4th screw is out. So now that we have all the screws out, what I'm going to do is take a spudger. I'm going to go right here. And I'm going to take the lip of the spudger and put it right here so I can lift the case off. Kind of like that. I'm going to take it around the casing and you should be able to hear it disconnect. Then what I'm going to do, you want to be careful because there are ribbon cables under here that connect to your controller. So you don't lift it up too far. You open it barely and you just kind of turn it over like a page a little bit, because I point this out with the spudger here. You see, here is a ribbon cable and here is a ribbon cable. You do not want these to break. These break, you're in trouble. Okay, now a lot of videos will disconnect this battery. The next part is very important. You see, a lot of videos will disconnect the battery from right here, which this is the battery connector. And a lot of people, when you push that up the wrong way, it will break. And it is a pain to get it fixed. So it's really optional if you want to remove the battery or not. As long as you're careful, you don't have to remove the battery. In fact, that's the safest way I recommend if you're a beginner. And what we're going to do, we're going to take a plastic spudger. This means it's kind of like a miniature plastic pry bar. And we're going to go here in the front. And right here, you can see there is a spot that you can put the plastic spudger. And it may give you a little bit of resistance. If it does, it's because there's light adhesive, tape underneath there, like right in here. And you pull that back. So you pull the battery back and just let it set. Do not try to disconnect it. Now, we will have the reader, Amiibo reader, right here, and we're going to pull that back. Now that is a difference from the left of Joy-Con to the right. When we're replacing this analog stick, you'll have that Amiibo reader or NFC reader, whatever you want to call it, and that is really the only difference. So what we're going to do now is there are, yet again on this one, 3 Phillips screws that need to come off. Under this shoulder button, right here is one, right here is another, and then of course on the battery carriage on this screw right here. And these will be slightly golden color. And these all should be the same length. Now I'm putting these on my magnetic pad, which you do not have to have. It just helps me keep track of it. Now this should lift up all the way to this shoulder button too. Now, keep in mind, be careful when you lift this over, because it is attached to the shoulder button up here. And you can kind of set it up here out of the way, because you can see it's actually connected right there. And you want to just leave it up out of the way. And actually the right analog stick is going to be a little easier than the left, because the 2 screws are more easily accessible. Here is the one, and here's the second one. There's 2 screws, and here is the connector that needs to come off. Closer look at that. So as you can see, right here is the connector to the ribbon cable. I have a plastic spudger, which is kind of like a miniature plastic pry bar, and you just gently lift up on that plastic lock that secures this ribbon cable in place. Then I'm going to take a pair of tweezers, put it down in there. I'm just going to pull that out just like that. And then I'm just going to take these other 2 screws off. Now, I want you to know that after you take these 2 screws off, there is a gasket underneath that is pushed up against the analog stick, and it could try to come out with the analog stick. If that happens, then you can put it back in, it's no problem. But once you get this analog stick loose, you may want to wiggle it just a little bit if that plastic gasket tries to come off. Okay, we got that off of there. Now we're gonna kind of wiggle just a little bit. See right here, or right here is that gasket I was talking about. And you can put it back in place if it comes off, but as you can see here, it's in place. Now, you might as well know that the R on the right Joy-Con, it's going to be the R button or the R shoulder button. This is definitely probably going to come off, and it's going to look like this. And it has a spring on it. Now, don't get worried if that happens. Just make sure you do not lose this spring, and I'll show you how to reconnect it. But just like the other Joy-Con I did, the left Joy-Con, I'm going to clean right here, and I'm going to clean this right shoulder button with some better isopro alcohol and cotton swabs. I'm going to clean that up while I'm in here. Usually when, you know, kids, doesn't even have to be kids, anybody who eats while they're playing video games, they can get like food particles or whatnot up in here. So no, I'm not blaming the kiddos. It can be anybody. So I'm cleaning that shoulder button, and I clean the case right here where the shoulder button's going to rest. All the rest of it looks clean. I'm going to set that back up out of the way. And what I'm going to do next, right here is the old analog stick that I extracted from here that I took out. And you can get any color of analog sticks. So I opted to get, you know, a different color, you know, something different. Works exactly the same, it's just a different color. So I got the red. Now the first thing I'm going to do, put the analog stick down in here. And then I'm going to put the screws in right now as I hold this up. And don't over tighten it. Just make sure that they're on there tight, but not too tight. Remember, these are plastic parts here. Okay, that is on there good. Once you hear that click, it's set in there right. Now, once you hear that click, it's back on there right. But we have one major important thing to do before we're ready to close this back up. I am going to take the tweezers, I'm going to grab right here on the black ribbon that's on the cable, and I'm going to push it up. Now once you get it lined up, you'll see that this should be even with this little gold bar. That's this gold line here. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to close this clip back. It's going to hold it into place. What I need to show you now is how to put this the shoulder button back on. So what you do, if you can see past this, and you got to be careful here because that shoulder button, this one has ribbon cable to it. You just insert this plastic button here, and you'll see that there's a place here. That's where the spring is going to fit in, and you fit the shoulder button down in there, and if it's right, you'll hear a click. Listen. Next thing you want to do, you want to take the battery compartment and make sure that you watch this cable here that goes to this shoulder button to make sure it's not stressed and that it's fitting back into place. You fit that back down in there, into place. This will also hold this left shoulder button in place. And what I'm going to do now is put those 3 screws that I took out earlier back into place. We have one that goes up here. We have another that goes in here. That's 2. And then we're going to have the 3rd one that goes down here. And it just screws in like so. Now, with this hanging just like this, you'll see that there is a ridge right here in the battery compartment. And that's where the battery wires are going to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make sure that the battery wire is over that way. And I'm going to fit it right back down into the battery carriage right there. And I'm just going to gently place a little bit, or I'm just going to gently push that down in there so the adhesive can connect to it again. So in this way we have bypass of unplugging that connector. Now I can actually do that, but if you're a beginner, you want to skip this step, trust me, because a lot of people have broken the power connector off of their Joy-Cons and have ruined their Joy-Cons and had to buy new ones. So hopefully I'm helping people by telling you you should just leave it plugged in. And also be careful when you're taking out the ribbon cables, when you're flipping up those retention brackets or those black safety locking mechanisms, because those can break too. Another thing we need to do that's different than the left Joy-Con that's in the right Joy-Con is we're going to take this wire, and as you can see, we're going to take this wire that goes to the Amiibo reader, and what happens is the reader itself is going to insert on the side by where the battery goes. There'll be 2 little plastic places where when you push down, it just inserts in there. And then that's where it stays at. You want to make sure that this wire here, and I use a plastic spudger, is secured to the tray. of the battery and that it's down in there. Good. And that it's on the side, that it's pushed down, and these two little plastic tabs are going to hold the reader in place. So with that done, you are ready to put the controller back together. Now, in putting the controller back together, it's just like a storybook, but you just lift it up and try to make sure it's lined up. You'll look over on the other side and make sure it's all lined up too, and you kind of clip it back together. Make sure it's not hanging out. And a lot of times you can hear the snap, just like it just did. A lot of times you'll hear it click into place like it just did. And then once it's like that, you will go ahead and put those 4 triangle screws back in place. And we want to make sure that these screws are in there good and tight. And they are. And then the finished product is a right joystick with a replaced analog stick. Remember, when you put these back onto your switch, you'll want to go in and recalibrate these to your system, and you should be good to go for a while. How long do these third-party analog sticks last? I have no idea. They should give you a few years of fun though. And if they mess up again, you know how to replace them. Anyways, if you've liked this video, then please smash that like button. Consider subscribing to my channel. And until next time, I'll see you later.